Ready? Good evening and welcome to our 2020 Greene County Development Corporation annual meeting. As we can all attest to, what interesting times we're in. Well, certainly not the way we wanted to have our 2020 annual meeting. I am grateful that Sean Seaborn's here with Seaborn Video to help us with the technology side of this and gives us the ability just to live stream it right into your own home. So it's nothing like being in person. It's never the same, but thanks for joining us tonight, and I think you'll find a very interesting program. Despite COVID-19 and the challenges that we all experienced, the last 12 months for GCDC have really been very active, and they've really resulted in some pretty amazing development activities. So just as a recap for our agenda tonight before I get started, we'll start the evening with a recap of a short business meeting. We'll be hearing then a summary from our director, Ken Paxton. Ken will summarize some of the activities that we've had during the year, and then we'll have the privilege of listening to three different speakers. Tracy Warner, the new CEO at Greene County Medical Center, is with us tonight, and she's going to give us some updates on the medical center and a glimpse at maybe a new project that they're working on. Nate Adamson's with us tonight. Nate's a developer from Des Moines, and Nate's been involved with the plans of the conversion of our middle school into what we refer to as rural luxury apartments. And then he's also going to talk about how that middle school project fits into the 3-block project that we've been talking about for some time, and you're going to start to hear a lot more about. Then capping off the night is Chris Deal. Chris is going to introduce us to the new co-working space that's under development and construction. And then Chris is also going to talk about some second-story living opportunities around our square. So as I mentioned, before the presentations, we need to have a short business meeting here. You know, it's typical at our annual meeting that we would accept the nominations for the renewal of those directors that their 3-year terms are expiring. But due to tonight's format, where we cannot have nominations, we cannot have votes, we're going to review those directors and who they are and look at their renewals, and those nominations and the voting will then happen at our next regular board meeting in October. So this is the list of those individuals who their 3-year term are maturing. Chris Connor, Doug McDermott, Lori Mantle, Mark Bauer, Mason Adams, Nick Sorensen, Norm Fandel, Peg Rainey, Rick Moraine, and myself, Sid Jones. You know, I want to really thank those individuals for their 3 years of commitment for continued economic and community development in Jefferson and in Greene County. And in particular, a thank you to Nick Sorensen. Nick has accepted a new position at Story Development, Story County Economic Development, and is going to be leaving our team. But Nick has really provided incredible leadership in many of the projects that have happened on our downtown square. And Nick's been very involved in our housing projects for the last several years. So we just want to have a special thank you for Nick and for the job that he's done so well for us, and that Nick will be greatly missed by Greene County. The next screen that we're going to look at is a screen of our standing officers and our executive committee for 2020. So myself, Sid Jones, President, Joel Williams, Vice President, Jim Ober, Treasurer, Rick Moraine, Secretary, and Norm Fandel, Past President. Those are the officers of the corporation. The remainder of the exec committee is Mike Palmer, representing the city of Jefferson, Pete Bardole for Greene County Board of Supervisors, Harry Ehrenholtz for the City Council, and then we have 2 at-large directors in Scott Weber and Kristen Russell. So that's the board, that's the exec committee, the way we have it set now. So what will happen there, just like the board of directors, at our October meeting, once the board is elected, then the board will present a slate of nominations for these offices, and then that exec committee will be formed once that's completed. So that's kind of rolled into our October meeting. Typically, that board of directors would be handled here, and the renewal of those that want to renew, and then any new members that we may have through nominations. So that's how that will work. Next, I want to invite Jim Ober up to the podium. Jim's our treasurer, and Jim's just going to give a brief review of the financial condition of GCDC. So, Jim, welcome to the podium. Need this?
Thank you, Sid. Do a brief coverage of 2019 and touch base on where we're at up to the end of August of 2020. So far in 2019, the operating account was at, including all assets, was at $256,564,000 in 2019, and then in 2020 up to August was $391,000. And the big difference there is our operating account, or not the operating account, but special projects account. You can see the difference there, $14,153 at the end of last year, where we still have $138,484,000 in the operating or the special projects account this year. Those funds, for the most part, are slated for some projects, which we'll talk about later. So the total assets for the year is $1,047,711 as of the end of 2019, and as of August, we're at $1,161,922, and liabilities at $79,198 at the end of 2019, and as of August, we're at $199,098. So our equity is at $968,000 and some change for 2019, and then as of August, $962,000. So, looking at a brief profit and loss summary. So the income for 2019 was $209,442, with expenses at $200,586, with a total income of $8,855. And then as of August of this year, we're $101,769, and then with expenses at $91,970, with a income to date of $9,800. Oops. So looking at some of the future special project expenditures, we have the White House Apartments, which we have slated $75,000 for that project. The Forge project this year is $10,000. Second story project, which you'll hear more about later, is $10,000. And the Early Learning Center fundraiser, which has kind of been slowed down a little bit with the COVID, but we have $14,000 set up for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Before I introduce our three special guests, I want to have Ken Paxton come to the stand. Ken's our executive director and does an incredible amount of work behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see, but always has projects that are in process, that are bringing it up to date, talking to a lot of people all the time. And Ken's going to give us kind of a review of a lot of the projects and activities that we did in 2020 or 2020, for the last 12 months actually. And so I'm going to introduce Ken, and he'll, I think, give us a little glimpse here at a video that he's put together that'll give us a little walk down memory lane. So Ken, please come up.
I'm going to start out by kind of echoing Sid's positive comments about how well this year has gone. And the way to explain it before I do the video is economic development is what I do, and so I spend a lot of time being aware of what businesses do across the country and following the trends and what's been going on during the pandemic. And during the last 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of interviews with our major employers. We do that once a year to kind of catch up on how their business is doing and where they're going and those kind of things. And it's really important to me to compliment the businesses we have in our community. We're extremely fortunate, where so much of the rest of the country has struggled and declined, in some cases significantly, our businesses have held up extremely well. And because of that, they've allowed for an environment and an economy that's let GCDC have a very successful year and establish some new projects that have gone down as 2020 to be a very positive year for us and for our community. So my compliments to our businesses, how well they're run and what they've been able to do to support our community. We're also lucky that we have a community that coordinates and works together. From our young community leaders that have stepped forward to our city councils, to our board of supervisors, everybody has been consistently working on the same page. And the results of that are what I'm going to show you in the video. In the past, I kind of went through a slideshow and talked about each slide, and then last year I started using kind of a video format to kind of make it a little bit more entertaining and not hear me talk so much, but give you some visual evidence of what we've been doing. So as a backdrop, this video you're going to see is a review of the projects that have gone on basically in the last year, and also an intro and preview of some of the things we have coming in 2021 and 2022. So I'll let that begin now.
Well, that is quite a video, Ken, that you put together, and it does kind of take you down memory lane a little bit. You forget about all the buildings that have been constructed, the additional tax dollars that are getting created from those buildings, the employees that are being added, all the housing. We went for years without having a new housing permit. And look at the new permits that we've had. Look at some of the single-family housing that's going on in the western part of Jefferson, the new multifamily housing, the White House apartments, what we're going to hear from Nate in a little bit. The changing in housing has really been incredible. And we all know how important that is. If we're going to be successful with the attraction of young families, they have to have a place to live. And they also need a few other amenities that are a part of this 3-block project that we're talking about. So now I want to introduce Tracy Warner. Tracy was appointed CEO of Greene County Medical Center by the Hospital Board of Trustees in June of this year, 2020. Tracy's no stranger to this medical center, having been involved in working with this hospital in her capacity as the Director of Rural Health Resources at Unity Point, Des Moines since 2005. Tracy's experience with rural hospitals began 30 years ago with the Iowa Hospital Association after moving to Iowa following college. Tracy's a native of Kansas City area and attended the University of Kansas, receiving a bachelor's degree of science in business administration in 1989. Tracy and her husband Rick have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. And if we could give her a big round of applause that you could all hear, we would. But Tracy, welcome to the podium and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much. And a big thank you to Sid and the Greene County Development Court Board. Thank you for inviting me to the presentation today. I feel somewhat like the performers on the CMAs or the award shows in the past weeks, where you're looking at a empty area, but there are some people in the room, so I appreciate some of the feedback. So thank you again. I think this is very timely to be here tonight to give a update on behalf of Greene County Medical Center. We have an exciting project going on that I think fits very nicely into the topics that are going to be presented by the other individuals on the panel tonight, as well as what you just saw in the video and the various other projects, as well as Sid's remarks on the economic development vitality of this particular area. Going to the information that I want to start with is just reminding you about some facts about Greene County Medical Center. And in particular, just being able to level set here with who we are. We are a 25-bed hospital. The designation by the Medicare program is called a critical access hospital, so you may hear that term occasionally, which is a name for Medicare's designation for smaller rural hospitals like Greene County Medical Center that limits us to 25 beds. We have almost 300 employees, so a large employer in the community, and we have about $25 million in net revenue from the various services that we provide. And just to remind you some of those services that are provided, we have a family medicine clinic. We have 5 full-time providers that you see on your screen there in their pictures. We also have 2 behavioral health providers now. We added a second provider earlier this year, so we have the capability to do some medication management as well as therapy and counseling for behavioral health issues. And we do have a full-time pediatrician. On the specialty clinic side, we have an array of employed individuals, including an employed general surgeon now for about the last year, as well as employed podiatrist, and orthopedics, of course, has been here for about 10 years now, as well as women's health services. And then we have a number of visiting specialists that come into the medical center on a regular basis. Specialties like cardiology are part of that mix of our visiting specialists. From a leadership standpoint, just wanted to give you some names and faces associated with current leadership at the medical center. There have been some new names and faces over the last year. Certainly, as we look at the impact of the pandemic and the derecho storm that hit this area in the middle of August, a lot of storms that we've weathered since the beginning of the year. Including changes in leadership. So I just wanted to let you all know that as far as leadership at the organization, following my appointment, we've also had 2 executives join the hospital here recently. Susan Moore is our chief nursing officer, and this is her 3rd week actually. And Chad Butterfield, our CFO, has been here now for about 7 weeks. Many of you may know Krista Simon. She's been at the medical center for close to 40 years now in various capacities, so we have that institutional knowledge and the history from her leadership over the years. And Dr. Mike Line is our chief medical officer that's here a couple of times a week. I would be remiss if I did not recognize our board of trustees at this point. We have 7 elected board members. They are Jim Sliceman, Dave Hoyt, Ralph Adazel, Doug Hahn, Kim Bates, Kate Neese, and Bill Rainey. And the reason that I want to recognize them is because they are all volunteer leaders. They are elected officials. They do appear on the ballot. So as you're looking ahead to elections in November, we have 2 trustees on the ballot this year. They're elected starting in 2018 to 4-year terms, but previously that was 6-year terms. So for nonpartisan elected officials, they put in a lengthy term and dedicate their time and volunteer their time as volunteer leaders in a complex environment that healthcare is, particularly as we're dealing with a lot of the issues that have come as a result of COVID-19. One of the reasons that I'm particularly excited to have the opportunity to lead Greene County Medical Center right now is because of all the economic development and economic vitality that is occurring in this community. As Sid indicated in my introduction, I've been coming to the Jefferson community for over 14 years now, and to be able to see the growth and the development in comparison to other rural communities that I've traveled to across the state was very exciting to me, and considering the opportunity to lead the hospital here in conjunction with a new project that I will talk about in just a moment. Just to let you know, from an economic impact standpoint, the medical center generated over $25 million for Greene County's area economy in 2019. And these figures come from an annual survey that is done, or annual analysis, I should say, that's done by the Iowa Hospital Association. And then they produce this information to establish for local communities, regions, and statewide, not only the demonstration of the importance of hospitals on the local economy as an employer, but also from a statewide perspective and even a national perspective for policymakers, and considering what kind of impact hospitals and the corresponding business have on our economy, and how important healthcare services are as part of an economic vitality and economic impact of a particular area, let alone the state, and now certainly during COVID, much more awareness of how healthcare and hospitals have played a vital part in treating people that are sick with COVID. So this number actually comes from what our employees spend in the area on retail sales within the county, again, using data and information that is compiled and analyzed by the Iowa Hospital Association, and what those employees contribute in terms of state sales tax as a result of that retail sale number there on the slide. I think the bottom line here, and I think it's worth repeating, but knowing that I'm really talking to the choir here, preaching to the choir, is that we are an important part as the medical center of an economic engine of this county, and want to be able to provide access to high-quality health care, particularly in the environment that we're in, as the other items that are addressed in the video and the work and activity that's gone on over the last several years at least, to be sure that we're part of that array of amenities necessary for economic growth. From the GCDC initiatives that have been mentioned and again are on the agenda today, housing is very important from a community standpoint, but for those employees that are looking for housing, and that we need to have housing locally for our employees at the medical center and the providers that are part of our staff. Schools, of course, are an important part of that. Had the opportunity to tour the new high school a couple of weeks ago, as well as see the new career center, the jobs, the tech companies and different industries that are locating here and having branches here. Obviously, healthcare is an important part of that, but to reiterate the fact that we are an employer as well as an important part of the economic engine of all the things that we're talking about through the Development Corporation. I'd like to take a few more minutes to just talk about a new initiative that we announced last week that I think fits right along with the topics on tonight's agenda, as well as the economic growth and support for this region, and as businesses consider locating here, or you have more employees that are in this area. We were very excited to announce last Monday a new initiative called Evergreen Ridge, a continuum of care community. The introduction of this new project was kicked off publicly last week, but this has been an initiative that the Greene County Medical Center Board has been looking at for about 2 years now. Many of you may know that the medical center houses a nursing facility or long-term care on its second floor of the hospital there. It's been in that location for about 55 years now. We also have a independent senior living facility called Evergreen Ridge, which is adjacent to the hospital. That's actually owned and operated by the Hospital Foundation. So looking at those two levels of care and looking at market data to establish that there is a need based on data analysis and data collection for some interim or some intermediate levels of care, I should say, in between that the independent living and the long-term care in the form of assisted living as well as memory care. Skilled care is also a component of that. Skilled care is provided right now at the hospital in the inpatient area, but not in the long-term care area. So essentially, with a new entity that will house all these levels of services, some of them that are already in existence now, some of them will be new. But the idea that you have under one organization and one umbrella, Evergreen Ridge, that continuum of care community that represents all these various levels of care, that again add to the array of amenities in this community so that people can locate here, they can continue to live here, their families can live here, their parents can live here, and also adding to the availability of housing with the independent senior living as well. So we were very excited to kick off this project announcement publicly last week. A couple more details in terms of what we're talking about here. As I indicated, this has been a board discussion or a board strategic item discussion for about 2 years now, knowing that the long-term care unit in the hospital was landlocked, and it's landlocked in the sense that it's on the second floor of the hospital. The idea that it needs renovation, we added about 55,000 square feet to the hospital 5 or 6 years ago, so that dramatically changed the footprint of the hospital, as well as being able to renovate other areas that are more office areas and relocate the emergency room, create a new operating room, et cetera. But long-term care has remained as is for a long period of time. So being able to use this as an opportunity to move those operations not only to a new entity that's locally controlled and locally operated, but to also build a new facility. The medical center purchased about 15 acres of land several years ago, and you can see here on your slide, the outline of the yellow is the new land that is adjacent to the hospital there. You may be familiar with the outline of that coming off of off of Lincoln Way there, where there is an access down at the bottom of that map, but essentially opens up to a large area with some wooded area along there that drops down more into a ravine that's probably not as developable. But today, the board of directors, that is a group of local residents to ensure that this entity is still locally governed and decisions are made regarding its operations in the same way that the operations have been under the hospital board for 55 years, that we have that local ownership, that local control. So by donating this land, as well as donating the current Evergreen Ridge operations to this new entity, the plan is to build a new long-term care facility, be able to offer some additional levels of care, seek out with those assets on a balance sheet, the land and the operations of Evergreen Ridge, as well as the long-term care licenses from the hospital, to be able to seek a loan from the USDA, long-term loan of 40 years at very low interest rate. So the economy is making that available now, and that funding has always been very promising to rural hospitals, and is actually what was used to fund the expansion a number of years ago. So it's a source of funding that we're familiar with. However, the difference here is that this operation will be under the auspices of a new governing board. You see a couple of those members of the board of directors on the screen here. We've got representation from local banking, as well as the current Medical Center Foundation, a retired a retired director of long-term care. So she's very familiar with the operations, if you know Linda Bills. Judd McGee is a retired attorney that just recently, fairly recently, I should say, returned to the area. Certified financial planner, Tim Heisterkamp, maybe a name that many of you recognize. And then today, with our second board meeting, just have added Diane Jackson, who was the mental health coordinator for the county, I believe. She's also an auxilian at the hospital. And Dan Bennett, understand he's retired and has quite an array of award-winning students from industrial arts from his instruction at the high school. This facility right now is contemplating a 42-bed long-term care unit, or 42 beds in a nursing facility, 10 assisted living units, and 10 memory care units. Again, stressing the importance of local control here, and a not-for-profit organization that moves these operations away from the medical center into a new entity that will apply for not-for-profit status, for 501c3 status. The importance of that operations being separated from the medical center right now is because of the financial impact of the long-term care operations on the hospital. As it relates to the Medicare reimbursement and the designation that I mentioned to you at the beginning of my remarks, as a critical access hospital and the way that Medicare reimburses the hospital, the long-term care operations are financially detrimental to the overall operations. If they are in a separate entity, they're no longer tied to the way Medicare reimburses us as a hospital. So it's not a direct impact to our bottom line, yet it begins to allow the medical center to offer those services that it is uniquely capable of offering, like the emergency care, like the inpatient care, like the clinic services that allow us to become a much more financially viable organization in the long run, while keeping these services local here in the community. Where's my timer? So in summary, just being able to share with you the timelines here. We've been discussing these options for quite some time with the Medical Center Board. Right now, we have kicked off the project from a public announcement, but prior to that announcement, underwent a market study and some financial projections. The board looked at the land physically. We're out walking the land today and looking at it, so we need to determine the architectural design, the zoning, all those types of things that go into actual development of the land. So we're looking at about a $18 to $20 million project, and again, reference the USDA funding. We put a stake in the ground of construction for 24 months and to open sometime in 2022. That's very aggressive if that's 2 years from this fall, but looking to 2 to 3 years time frame where we could look out and see a new facility on the land adjacent and behind the hospital there. And then being able to continue to stabilize the operations from that point after we open. And important to note that the 93% fill rate is there, that we would expect occupancy at 93% to meet our financial projections. And it's also important to note that this project contemplates that the other long-term care facilities and assisted living, those types of options still remain in place, that this is a complement to those services. So in conclusion, I would just add what I have heard as we've announced this project and have continued to have interaction with employees, with families that have folks in long-term care that have used the services in the past. Over the 55 years, that this is a great addition for the residents, the community of Jefferson, the county, and the region, which I think, again, fits very nicely with all the other economic impact or economic vitality projects that are taking place in this region and in this community currently. So with that, I will end my presentation and allow us to move on to the next presenters.
Thank you, Tracy. That's a lot to swallow, but wow, what a great opportunity for this county and this whole region to have a facility like that to attract residents. So that's terrific. It'd be nice if we could have those questions, and then you could really share even more, but unfortunately this format's not going to allow for that tonight. So our next speaker, Nate Adams. Nate gave me a little bit of a bio here, and I'll kind of work my way through parts of that anyway. Nate was born and raised here in western Iowa, and he's the oldest of 8 children. He's from Carroll County. Nate really shares a passion, I think, for and motivation for the lives of rural communities. And growing up on the farm, he's got that selfless kind of a work attitude that he works with. He has a vision, and he's shared that vision with us in a lot of different ways. We've been working with Nate for a couple of years now and have enjoyed really his ability to collaborate. And he really gets a lot of different people together. He collaborates well with public bodies, with private individuals, and I think is a real skill. He works well with our city of Jefferson, with GCDC, and a lot of others that he's touched so far. The project that he's really working on, and his main project, is the readaptive use of the Greene County Medical Center into 25, what I called before, kind of rural luxury apartments. He also is involved in the overall 3-block project, and we've just kind of started to talk more about that. When we think about our high school and the academy and Vision 2020, the high school and the academy were the crown jewel, and we knew that we needed to get through that. Once that's now opened, there's another phase that we need to look at, and that's the amenities. And what are the other amenities that it's going to take to continue to attract this younger generation that has a family, and attract them to our factories with the right employment, in the academy to support those jobs, to attract them to our medical center to be employees there, to attract them into professional. And COVID's brought a whole new attraction to us, and that's those that want to work from home. And there's a larger and larger percentage of people that are going to work from home for extended periods of time, and maybe most the rest of their life. And the fiber optics and the speed that we have here with our internet capabilities makes that a real attraction and something that's very unique. So the 3-block project is another phase, and Nate's been really involved with us there, and you're going to see some of his involvement and some of his vision for not only the building, but the area that surrounds that building. It's a park-like atmosphere, and it's a vision that we're all going to have to start to think about, and how can we make that happen. Nate graduated from the University of Northern Iowa with a degree in finance and real estate. He then got his MBA from the University of Iowa. Today, Nate's employed with Principal Financial Group in Des Moines, where he's currently the investment director overseeing private equity real estate portfolio located in Georgia and Florida, yet he lives in Iowa. Nate and his wife Erica have 3 children, 4.5, 3, and 10 months. And I will invite Nate to the podium here, and it's like being on vacation here tonight rather than being home with them 3 kids, Nate. So We are happy to have you and really looking forward to your presentation. So please welcome Nate Adams.
Thanks, Sid. Good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be up here and speak with you again. I did present a little bit of a longer slide deck at the 2019 annual dinner, so I've included a couple of slides here that are a little bit of refreshers, but then also look forward to providing an update and where we're heading through the rest of the year and 2021. I think it's safe to say things are going to start to get a little bit more interesting, and we're excited about doing that and advancing this one. Advance this. There we go. This is an old shot from 1920 that we've caught, and this is a historic renovation, and this is ultimately what we want to recreate. And so that's a little black and white, but there's a lot of pretty architectural renderings that can be done out there. But this is ultimately what we want it to look like again, and we wanted to restore it as a historic middle school building, and that is part of the overall 3-block project. And I do want to spend a little bit of time on this and obviously come back to it. I think it's exciting for a lot of people to look at, and as you visualize this is a vision at this point. We went back to the Vision 2020 plan that was done by the GCDC through a team of folks that have been involved with me along this process. We looked at all the different components of what the public needed and community needs, and et cetera, and working with a land designer, have kind of tried to embody all of those into what we're calling the 3-block project. Included in the 3-block project, not necessarily represented here, is the community center. And there is conversations and vision you saw from some of the video that Ken put together of maybe a water park down the road and working towards that. So that's been kind of removed from this overall plan. But I don't know how well you can see it necessarily on the screen in terms of the numbers off to the right, 1 through 12. But I'll work left to right on the screen there, and you can see the red kind of up and down vertical path. That is Harrison Street. That's been a concept in which we thought about maybe closing that off and creating a farmers market concept, and really tying in this 2-block or part of the 3-block project into the community center, and really creating a walkable environment. That corner is also the entrance into the downtown square on the southwest part of Jefferson, and what you guys have beautifully gentrified and is a really strong asset to the community. Separating the first building and the white building that's up and down is the middle school building, kind of floor plate of it. And then beyond that is a promenade, that is expected to kind of separate that middle school from the remaining parcel. All of this is to be programmed further, and a lot of studies and efforts to be made beyond this. But we got to start somewhere, and this is the dream and the vision that we're communicating right now. And I'll touch on the community awareness that is going to be a big focus going forward on this. As you see, there's an open park area, an amphitheater in the lower left corner of that park. I think it's number 2, if you can see that. And then a park area, playground area at the end of that. And you can see there's walking paths and pavers and walkable environment that's really connecting the city. And as you come in on Highway 4 from the south, you're going to see some nice view corridors directly into that. You'll have the bell tower in the backdrop, and really as a nice entrance into the city and the square. And so even though I am, quote unquote, leading the development team on the Jefferson Middle School, you can see just as much energy and passion is being shared with the 3-block project and really creating a special asset. You can imagine this is not easy. It's complicated. It's involved a lot of folks, including the school board, the city of Jefferson, the board of supervisors, GCDC, et cetera. And so it's been a very collective effort for 2 years, and we're not there yet. And this isn't necessarily a representation of where we're going to be. But I think it really shares a lot of what the community wants, and have gotten positive feedback along the way. The other building that kind of goes right to left or left to right is the GCELC new planned building. As you know, they're currently, it's the current Greene County administration building is along, runs kind of east-west on the south end of the site. GCLC is interested in building a new building on that corner and along Vine Street, and have been in conversations with myself and GCDC and the school board as well. And I have some notes to share regarding where kind of an update from GCEOC. So I covered a lot of this now and may come back to this later in the presentation, but for now, I just wanted to highlight this plan and kind of been updated from a year ago. These are some reminder from last year's presentation, but to refresh people's memory here, some inspiration photos of what we're trying to create with the amphitheater areas. The middle picture on the top right is, I think, a perfect representation of what that park area could be, where you have kids running around playing during the day, but then at night you have a live band, or Ken Paxton can get his guitar out and play on the stage, and people bring out their chairs and enjoy the beautiful weather and community, particularly as we jump into the fall here. So some inspirational photos of kind of some park area. As we transition more to the middle school and the units themselves, we are through schematic design. We have interviewed and received proposals from 6 contractors. We've narrowed that down to 3. Those interviews are ongoing, and over the next couple of weeks, plan to be selecting a group to come on board with us at this stage that we're at, and really kind of bring them what I refer to others as bring them under the hood and show them kind of where we're at and all things this project and how we get there in terms of delivering to the overall 3-block project. We just kind of going through some more business updates or matters and more of a summary for you all. I've touched on the middle school, just update with the schematic design and the contractor interviews. Greene County School Board, we've been focusing on them in the last 60 days and really presenting these ideas, listening to them, speaking with them, trying to brainstorm what their vision is, tying in with the city. And there is a public hearing that was voted and going to be happening in October. So a lot more awareness to the community and the public and the city is really the phase that we're heading into. We're heading down 2 parallel paths, in my opinion. We're working on the construction and the design, obviously, of the middle school, but starting to work on the true entitlement and community awareness of the 3-block project. And the discussion and planning regarding the gym is a heavy topic, and it's continued to be ongoing. We're working actively with the school board to look at what facilities have been developed with the new high school, as well as the renovations that are happening to the current middle school, or the current high school, I should say, the new middle school, and trying to make sure that the needs of the community are met through the gym space and through programming needs of the school board. So those conversations are gone, and I think everybody within GCDC and the school board would say that it's been a collaborative effort. It's been one where we need to listen and continue to meet the needs of the community and be sensitive to that. And we're continuing to work on that together. I mentioned community awareness. I think the city staff has been introduced a little bit more to this revised plan, or this updated master plan I shared with you guys, and there's going to be a lot of ongoing conversations heading into the public hearing and some more community awareness over the coming year. I think this is at the end of the year is a really good goal and target to really start to create awareness so that the community knows exactly what we've been working on so diligently for 2 years. And that we weren't necessarily at a point where we are today, and we're ready to really share that with the community and move this project along. Greene County Early Learning Center, as I mentioned, I did have a chance to catch up with Jackie and appreciate her support and sharing some comments. And just as an overall update with me, really trying to be a collaborative support for the overall 3-block project. As you can imagine, GCLC has been impacted by COVID. The work from home environment has kept kids out of the early learning center. It's kept them in different environments. And so she's happy to report that they are getting back to pre-COVID type of levels, and the staffing and support of people coming back into their learning center is picking back up. So that is heading in the right direction. But to say it's been an easy year so far for ELC, I think is not what anybody expected, and we continue to want to be supportive of the community, supporting ELC and their efforts. They obviously, one thing with that, for example, that is going to be really supportive for growth going forward is Jackie shared with me that they are a QRS Star 4 rated early learning center, the only one in the county. And I think that's something that means a lot more to that environment than what I necessarily understand here. But she shared a note that there's 9 babies, new babies, coming into the early learning center over the next coming months. And I think that's a really profound thing that kind of pulls at everybody's heartstrings a little bit about the growth of this community and the continued growth of families here in a rural environment, which is very, very special. In a lot of rural communities, even where I've grown up, you're not seeing that type of growth within the community. I think that's really special. I think it was alluded to earlier, but they had kind of launched a fundraising campaign with support from the GCDC. She's mentioned that they do have soft commitments or commitments of $1 million. That has been paused at the time with the COVID environment. But as we bring this awareness of the 3-block project to the greater community with the support of GCDC and everyone else in the community, we're going to be bringing that back to the forefront as part of the larger 3-block project and really trying to communicate a larger plan here, how we keep that. Sid says it best in our conversations, and I think he would say it best again, but the Early Learning Center is some of the best economic impact a small town can have, and it's very important. So we want to continue to be supportive of that. Overall, 3-project planning and just kind of where we're going to go forward is the community impact. And this is really kind of a summary bullet point, but we've looked at Vision 2020. We've really tried to focus on meeting the needs of the community. We have a lot of awareness that we're going to continue to communicate in the coming months, and look forward to seeing where that is. We are focused on the luxury rural living environment, as Sid spoke to, as you look at the White House apartments and upper story housing and assisted care, assisted living care that Greene County Medical Center is focusing on. We think we're fitting a niche of that folks that want to live in a historically renovated middle school that will have very nice inspired visions next to a park, walkable to downtown, walkable to the Hy-Vee, with the farmers market and potentially music and bands and all the amenities that we're speaking about bringing to. So very excited about continuing to be a supporter of the 3-block project and advancing the Jefferson Middle School. And I appreciate Ken and Sid and all of GCDC's support and effort as well as we get through this. So that sums up my comments. Thank you very much.
Nate, thank you so much. Yeah, if we could have a round of applause, that would, I'm sure, draw a big one. So anyway, thank you. Chris is going to need this. So the next introduction I have is no stranger to any of us. Chris Deal has obviously worked on a lot of projects here, and kind of the force behind the high school and our academy, as well as the Forge that's here in town, and a lot of other projects. As we think about technology and you think about that work environment and you think about working from home, what's really needed? And co-working spaces have been around for a while, but they're all in the metro areas. There are no co-working spaces in rural America. But we think if we're going to have a technology community, we need a co-working space. Chris and a couple of other partners have been working really hard on this for quite a while. And again, it's going to come to fruition, and Chris is going to come up and talk about that. And then he's also going to talk about some second-story housing opportunities kind of around our square, and especially in that building that the co-working space is going to reside in. So, Chris, please come to the podium and bring everyone up to speed.
All right, as many of you know, I tend to ramble, so I've got the timer going. So I'll try to keep this at the allotted time. First, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk. This is a fun one to talk about tonight, just because there's been a lot that's happened here in the very recent past on both the co-working and the upper story projects that have been going on for a while. And like the projects that Sid's talked about, that Nate and Tracy talked about before this, all of these are possible because we have so much collaboration within this community, so much combined effort from various organizations, and that's a really special thing that we have here in Jefferson and in Greene County, and absolutely is a key piece on both the co-working and the upper story initiatives that are ongoing. And I would certainly be remiss if I didn't first give a very big thank you to GCDC. GCDC was a very important partner on both of these projects, providing some of those very difficult to find upfront funds, both for Gravitate and for the Upper Story project. They did that also with the Forge. A lot of times on these projects, you need to find some funding up front to bring in an architect, bring in a structural engineer, bring in historians, whatever it might be, and that's early on before you really have anything to go off of. And so again, thank you GCDC for those funds, because those really are critical as we try to do some of these projects. So we'll start talking, and the first image I show, and I apologize, Sean, we're going to jump around quite a bit on this one, and so for those watching at home, if it's a little slow, that's from me being slightly disorganized as I put all of this together. So I show an image here, and Sean, I don't know if we have the transition or not. So you're probably seeing the Sensibly Chic building. And so many of us, certainly people in this room and people watching at home, remember what that building looked like before it was Sensibly Chic. And to see one building and to experience what that transformation can do, not only to that building, but to an entire downtown, I mean, that's a fantastic story example of what these rehabilitation projects can do, and knowing not only bringing a business to town, but rehabbing the second story, creating that much more activity in a downtown. I mean, that was a project. Again, he got some recognition earlier, but Nick Sorensen was a critical piece of that, set an example of what we can do. And really is an example of how much impact some of these projects can have. And so how can we take that? How can we create that? And we've been looking at this for several years, and we've actually had the opportunity to sit down and talk with key players at the state level, Debbie Durham and her staff at IEDA, IFA. And what we've shown is that this is really difficult to do from a cost perspective. In a rural community, and so we're lucky that the state has realized that and provided some new programs. We'll talk about a little bit more as we keep going through this, but have opened up some opportunities here that hadn't been there before. So the goal is, can we do that have this same kind of transformation? And the next building here is what used to look like this, and has already turned into an incredibly beautiful building on the exterior. But now how do we fill this in on the interior? We've got a quarter of it occupied right now, Heartland Bank, in the corner of that building, and now filling out the rest of the first floor and figuring out what can we do with the second floor on this building as well. So first piece of this, we're going to talk about what's happening on the first floor, and that's Gravitate Co-working. And very importantly, I put the picture of Jeff Wood up here. Jeff Wood is the owner of Gravitate Co-working. Jeff got connected with Jefferson a few years ago when we were going through the Vision 2020 process, and the idea of co-working was brought up as a potential opportunity for Jefferson, for Greene County. And so through Zach Mannheimer, a connection he had with Jeff, Jeff was brought into the community and started talking about the idea of rural co-working. Jeff had never done rural co-working. He started Gravitate in Des Moines in 2013. The name Gravitate comes from the intent to be an entrepreneurial center of gravity, which is something to me is incredibly exciting when you think about entrepreneurship and some of the possibilities that come from entrepreneurship, especially in a rural setting. When they describe what they are, that first quote there, we're a community of freelancers, entrepreneurs, remote workers, and startup team members who work independently but don't want to work alone. And that's the idea of co-working. But the interesting thing is you get this really fantastic mix of different people doing different things, but being able to come together and collaborate and create some of this internal momentum and some really unique possibilities that they've seen happen in their space in Des Moines. And Jeff and I actually go back. We were friends and knew each other through college, and so was a fun small world moment when he came in. Zach brought him in and started this conversation about what's it take to get Gravitate here to our community. And so it has been a couple years. Jeff certainly was very interested in the idea, something he hadn't done before. And so it just took a lot of time to look at what would it take to make this thing feasible. Eventually, after lots of collaboration, like I mentioned early in this, lots of impact and help from multiple organizations around the community, decided that this makes sense, let's figure out how we can get it done. And that's where we moved into the actual implementation phase, which is coming to a conclusion here. What you see now on the right side of this, that's what the space looked like at the beginning of the project. Actually, it actually looks better than at the very beginning. They've opened up the ceiling in that, but you can see that certainly a bit of a fixer-upper, but the vision was in the upper left. That's the Heartland space, which arguably looked worse than where we started with on Gravitate, and you can see how great that finished out. So I knew that there certainly was some potential for this space. This is the Gravitate space in Des Moines, and it gives a feel for the finishes, kind of the look that they try to bring into their spaces. Very open, lots of places for people to sit down and do whatever they need to do in terms of work, of collaboration. And so they're looking to bring that into what we have for a space here in Jefferson. Now, Des Moines is about 13,000 square feet. The Jefferson space is about 1,500, so more compact, but certainly a vision and an intent for that 1,500 to expand and be 3,000 square feet in the not-too-distant future. So you can see some of the images. You can see the floor plan on the left of this slide, and coming together with a very open, very functional conference room in the back. The top part of that floor plan, 2 enclosed offices, and then several seats available for people coming in and working throughout the facility. And here are some images from yesterday of what it looks like. So you can see absolutely coming together. The 2 offices there on the right, the conference room, will be a lot of glass, a lot of an open feel. The kitchenette is what will be coming in there on the left. And then you can see just a couple of those historic tins starting to come back on the top on the ceiling there. So they had to take everything down, come back with new tins, doing a lot of work for the acoustics. When you have these old historic buildings, you have to think a lot about how do you provide that acoustic separation between first floor, second floor. So a lot of thought, a lot of planning has gone into this, but incredibly exciting to see where it is today and where it's going. So one of the questions that often comes up, and this I purposely am moving into now because as we finish out the build out, now Jeff's looking at how do we provide people to work in the co-working space? How do we find members for it? And so what is co-working? What do people do? There is a lot on this slide. I'm guessing that it's probably difficult to see, and so I'll just highlight a few of the things. But it is more than just a tabletop for you to come and set down a laptop. One of the unique things Gravitate does, 2 unique things. One, they focus on supporting entrepreneurship, and the amount of programming, the amount of services they provide to their members really does set them apart from a lot of the other co-working spaces that exist out there. And the other piece they focus on is community and creating community and finding a way to give people, the remote workers, and something that I know we are going to be seeing here, and a lot of people probably already feel here over after the last few months, is that remote working, if you're doing that day in and day out, can actually be a lonely type of a structure. And so how do you create community? How do you do things to provide that level of interaction that you get from an office environment? And they've done a fantastic job of creating that sense of community in their spaces, and something that they really have distinguished themselves as, and that they will be bringing here. And so with the Jefferson Gravitate, members of the Jefferson Gravitate will have full use of Des Moines Gravitate, both the Des Moines downtown location, and they have a location in Windsor Heights. Also comes obviously with high-speed internet access, 24/7 access to the space, use of the conference rooms, use unlimited printing, shredding, complimentary beverages, as much coffee as you can drink. So for those of us who are slightly addicted to caffeine, I've talked through with Jeff to see if he's absolutely sure on that. He's guaranteed that there is an unlimited pot of coffee. The Des Moines space, and I believe, and I might get in trouble when I say this, but I know the Des Moines space has craft beer on tap, so I'm angling for that to be the same here in Jefferson, but maybe we try to replace the beer with another local beverage if we can coordinate on that one. And then several other networking components to it. There's mail service, which Jeff has said is something that a lot of his Des Moines clients appreciate, having a business address, so not all of that's coming to their local personal address, and several other components that create this really unique package of services or package of amenities that are there for those using the co-working space. And then the other question that is frequently asked is, how much does it cost to be a member of a co-working space? And so I coordinated with Jeff on this one. On the top there, they have their standard rates, and these are consistent across both of their spaces in Des Moines. So floating desk, dedicated desk, and a private office. The idea of a floating desk being you can come and go as you please. You get all of those amenities, but you will be able to come in and sit down wherever there's an open spot. A dedicated desk. Step up from that, you can set up your desktop, you can have your family pictures, everything, and you have your dedicated location. And then obviously a private office, being able to close the door, 2 of those available in this space. The rates they've used in Des Moines, and Jeff's still working through the rates for the location here in Jefferson, but they've used $175 a month for the floating desk, $300 a month for dedicated, and then the private office varies depending on the location. But Jeff had broken it down. Floating desk is about $6 a day. So if you drink as much coffee as I do, you work through that in about the first 2 hours of the space. But he is looking at using a fairly heavy discount, really wanting to move this, occupy that space as quickly as possible. And so he said he's planning on $100 a month as kind of the opening rate here in Jefferson for the floating desk. And then with the dedicated desk and the private office, connecting directly with him to coordinate on those. I believe 6 dedicated desks are available, and like I said before, those 2 private offices are available. And he also does have a structure for daily passes and a punch card structure if you're just going to come in a few times a month. So a lot of different ways you can use the space. There's also, if you a organization, someone just needs a use of the conference room, structures for that as well. So flexibility is a very important piece to what they bring, and they reflect that in how they price it as well. So, and like I said, lots of fun things happening here. Last night at the city council meeting, they approved the lease, which is the final step into finalizing this whole process. And so once they finish construction, which is due to be done within the next month, they will occupy and this space will be up and rolling. And so with that, Jeff and the Gravitate, their online presence, they started posting about this all over the place. And so hopefully now we move into getting to publicize this really exciting project that we have been working on here for a few years. Next, the upper story piece, and I'll go through this pretty quick. But this is the other piece of it now is how do we finish out the top side of this building, and certainly how do we use this as a step to future upper story projects. This is what the upper story looks like today. Again, I think I used the term fixer-upper before. Very much also a fixer-upper here on the City View building. Corridor, stairway going up. This on the right, that's where the building has its current name, City View on State, a fantastic view of downtown. And so there is certainly some possibility with it. Been working with architects. This is the existing floor plan on the left of the screen here. That's viewing out on State. And then, so that would be the entrances to the commercial bays below. And this is the idea. This is still very schematic, but the thought is to use this to create 2 one-bedroom and 1 two-bedroom apartment above that space, with that upper left being that premier view of downtown. And again, some exciting news we found out on Monday. So a big piece of this was a grant from the state and an application we put in a couple months ago. And we found out on Monday we had been awarded that grant. So a CDBG grant, a new upper story program, and with the award of that grant, we're rolling right into the next part of the funding, the financing of it, and that's procuring the historic tax credits. So it'll still be a few months, but that grant was really the key piece to it. And now it's just kind of stepping through the process that is a time-consuming one, but also one that makes projects like this possible. So very exciting news to hear about that. Very excited about where we can go with this project. We were one of two communities. It's actually through the city was awarded it, and we'll be working with the city to fill out that second floor. And so lots of collaboration to come. But I think the state is very much on board with helping this to be a success story. One thing Jefferson has got a well-deserved reputation for is when money is awarded to our community, things tend to happen. And that's something that isn't true across the state. And so reputation we fully intend on upholding and working through and giving them another success story to tout here in town. So again, thanks for the opportunity to give the update. I think I only went over by about 1 minute on my time, so that's a win. And appreciate, again, all of the support from all the great organizations and certainly GCDC, because without that kind of support, we can't do projects like this. So thanks again, and Sid, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay. Chris, I think if you would have talked just a little faster, you'd got in your minute. But unbelievable presentation. Thank you so much for that update and this whole idea of co-working space. And we've heard about this a decade ago, but that's when it was in Washington, D.C., and New York City, and places like that. And now these co-working spaces are here. And we also have those rural workers that are here, and we think we have, we're getting to the point where we have a package. And we need to market that package. We need to not just market it to Greene County and this region, but we need to market it externally in a way that we haven't even thought of yet. So those are also parts of discussions that are ongoing. But kind of to start to wrap up our night here, I'm going to ask Ken to come back to the podium and give any closing remarks that he may have. Obviously, Ken does an incredible amount of work behind the scenes and continually contacts people and is has our face in front of the state a lot, and is a really good representative for us with the state of Iowa and the governor's office and Debbie Durham and a lot of people. So Ken, come back.
Just a couple quick points. The one sad part about this evening is that we're doing this live streaming. You just listened to a lot of speakers. You saw a video from me. You've listened to Sid. In the over 10 years I've been here, we have never had this level and this number of projects. This is ironically, the year of COVID. The projects that have come to fruition and are in process and are moving through, we've never had them at that scale. You had the new construction at the hospital. You've got the middle school. You've got the 3-block project. You've got the co-working space. You've got they go on and on and on. Second-story housing. All of the other projects we've done, and these are all. And think about this. These are all going on in a tiny rural county in a city that has less than 5,000 people. If you listed those projects someplace on a piece of paper of what's going on, they'd think it was in a city of a couple million people, and yet we've done that in a city that has less than 5,000 people. And why did we do that? We did that because of cooperation. I'm always proud to say that our governor quotes and uses Greene County as an example as a successful rural county, and she says the reason we are successful is cooperation from our young leaders to our businesses, to our city councils, to our board of supervisors, to Grow Greene County, to all of our volunteer groups. Everybody has successfully worked together as a team, and we do it year after year after year. And look what happens. Look what we did in a tiny rural community, and look what we're doing. Look at all the housing projects we've got going on. So anyways, I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you to all those people that made it possible. Thank you to our young leaders who stepped forward and developed Vision 2020, and look what's come out of that. So we're extremely fortunate, and I know COVID may be a bad thing and may be a pandemic year, but it really hasn't seemed to slow us down much. And not only that, from 21 and 22 on, it's just going to get better. So thank you for making my job fun and exciting, and just God bless our country and God bless Iowa.
Thank you, Ken. And Ken does have a unique perspective. He's involved with a lot of regional things as well as the state of Iowa, and being the first home-based community in Iowa was one of those, and we're again kind of coming back to those veterans and trying to see what we can do there. One entity that we haven't talked a lot about yet is Grow Green County, and one of the really solid sources that has helped us. And I know there was a lot of pros and cons with the casino and that coming here, but the revenue sharing that's happening there is really incredible. And what it's doing for this community in so many different ways. And Grow Green County was an integral part of getting our school system put together, and really stepped up with funding on the Performing Arts Center and the gymnasium part of that. And then the other piece that we have are these wind towers. And the county and the Board of Supervisors and their recognition of what the revenue off of those wind towers can do for us, and what can they do for us in a community development atmosphere. And those are two revenue sources that hardly anyone else in a small county like this has. The wind towers are showing up in a lot of places, but there may never be another casino built in rural Iowa. And so it's really an advantage for us. The collaborative effort, it was a big project that we never thought we could get over, $35.5 million, I think, for a school and academy. And so as we start to think of these other projects, the dollars are going to seem big, but they're not big at all in comparison to what we've done. And so it is going to take that collaboration that Ken talks about. The school and the academy was the crown jewel, but these other projects and amenities that we are starting to talk about and are going to bring really to everyone's awareness really need to be done. The Early Learning Center, Nate touched on the Early Learning Center 2 or 3 times, but that is so close in importance to the school and the academy, it's almost scary. Some people would put the Early Learning Center above that in economic development and the importance to a community. So again, not a cheap thing to do, but it's an investment. It's an investment for the industry that's here. It's an investment for the employees at our medical center, at Home State Bank, at the other banks, at all of the industry and the professional services that are here, the Early Learning Center can touch. So one of our really big keys as we go forward is that project. Anyway, in closing, I'd just like to thank Ken for putting this together. Sean, and Jason sits in the background here all the time, Jason Cerveny, and he kind of keeps our IT stuff going for us too, and makes us look a lot better than we are. But Sean, thanks for your technology tonight and getting us into the homes of people when we can't get there. To our speakers, Tracy, Nate, Chris, thank you for your time and your expertise in explaining what's going on. So I'd ask for an adjournment, but it's not really a formal meeting, so I can't even ask for one of those. But thank you for tuning in and listening to this meeting tonight. It was an important one, and as Ken said, I don't know if there's another small community our size that probably has projects like this that are under development and are going to happen. These projects aren't somebody's dream anymore. These are projects that are actually going to be here. So thank you again for your time, and hopefully we get to show this around the community quite a bit, and it'll be broadcast. We did record it, so if your friends didn't get a chance to see, look for a chance to introduce them to this program. Thank you, and good night.